Hello, this video is set up to give you an overview of the reading process and the writing process, so it's really just touching on the basics. And I want to start by looking at the reading process. So one of the things about college is that we don't read it in college like you would read if you were, say, just picking up something to read for fun. Book, magazine, scrolling through YouTube comments, whatever it may be. When we are reading in college, we have to do what's called active reading. And active reading really means that you are engaging with the text in really intentional and consistent ways in order to gain more understanding. So a few reasons why we do the reading process. First of all, it just helps with basic comprehension. It helps you make sure that you're not missing key points or key details. Also, the reading process will help make sure that you just be understanding, right? So basic comprehension. So not just missing things, but that you're understanding what it is that you're reading. In addition, it can help with memory. So in some classes, you're going to have to remember content for quizzes, etc. That's really hard to do when you're maybe taking a full load of classes. You might work full time, you may have kids or other family. There's lots going on. So being able to retain information is really difficult. So using the reading process can help with that. And then the reading process also, just the way it's designed, sets you up to be able to use that reading. Very rarely, if ever, in college are you going to be assigned something just because. You're assigned reading because there's some purpose or intent behind it. There's something that you're going to be doing with that reading or some information that you need to take away from the reading. So really important to kind of apply the process so that you're ready to use whatever that information is when it comes time. So the reading process really kind of breaks down into three sections. There's some things you should do before you read, there's some things you should do while you read, and then there's some things you should do after reading. So before reading, you want to preview a text, meaning that you should kind of scan through it. You should see how it's set up, how it's formatted, how long is it. Sometimes something that looks really long or sounds really long, like 50 pages, when you look at it, you might realize that, oh, well, there's only a few sentences on each page, or the majority of this is pictures. That's not going to take as much time as maybe something that's only 5 pages long, but is really dense, difficult reading, no pictures, no graphs, no charts. And so giving you a preview kind of helps mentally prepare you for what it is that you're going to be looking at and seeing. And then the other part before reading is really important to understand the purpose. Like, why are you reading it? What are you going to be taking away? What should you be looking for? What do you need from it? And again, that's going to help kind of prepare your mind to get that information, whatever it is, whatever the purpose is, to be able to focus on that. While you read, there's a couple things that are really helpful. Annotating is it's really a type of note-taking, but it's a type where you're actually writing directly on the text. So you write in your books, you write on assignment instructions when they're handed out. And that really forces you to engage with what you're reading. It's really easy when you're not annotating to read a paragraph and be thinking about 15 other things at the same time. And then you go back and you're like, shoot, I don't even know what I just read. And then you read it again and the same thing happens and you read it again. That gets really frustrating, and it is also really time consuming. Students don't have a lot of time. So doing something like annotating really just helps you get what you need to in a quicker fashion than if you really just try to kind of reread sections over and over because you weren't able to focus on it. Doing separate note-taking, like in a notebook or on note cards, is also a useful technique. Some students find it works really well. Note-taking can also be something that you do through audio, so you can actually record notes of you speaking what you're writing or what you're reading about, rather than doing it on a separate paper. Some students find that audio approach really useful. And basically, while you read, the biggest thing is you want to interact with the text. You don't just want to read it and be distant from it. You want to constantly ask questions of the text, rephrase sections of the text, try and figure out, well, what is this saying, or how does this connect back to our class? If you're reading a set of assignment instructions, oh, let me circle this word, I don't know what it is, or oh, better highlight this section because the instructions say if I don't do this, I won't pass. So just doing something so that you're interacting with the text while you read is really important. And then after you read, you want to do just some basic reviewing, right? Make sure that you're thinking about, well, what did I take away from this? You can practice summarizing, right? Repeating the key information that was given throughout the text or the key main ideas. And then, of course, some sort of application, right? Again, back to the purpose, know why you're reading so that when it comes to after reading, you have whatever you need from the text to be able to apply it to CAS work. Now, as we go through the quarter, there's going to be different strategies that we're going to practice and use and do each week to really help you get familiar and comfortable with the reading process and to start seeing what works for you best versus what maybe doesn't work so well. So we're going to go in more depth with these, but I just wanted to give you kind of that initial overview that there is a process to reading. You should apply this process to not only, say, assignments from books, but to anything you read in college. If you're giving assignment instructions, if you are reading the, details of, I don't know, whatever it is, maybe a discussion board online, maybe it is some online comment section that you're looking at. Maybe it is a textbook. Maybe it's an article that's been given. But whatever it is, if you apply this process, you're going to understand it better and take more away from it than you would if you didn't do anything at all. Now, the flip side of the reading process is the writing process. Now, sometimes students are more familiar with the writing process. It's taught a little bit more consistently in high schools, for instance. But really what the writing process is designed to you is to walk you through kind of a series of steps to help you get to a polished final draft that you feel good about, right? And so in order to have the most success writing, you got to start by doing some sort of pre-writing. And really that breaks down to two things. You want to think through your ideas, whatever it is that you're going to write about, and then you want to organize them in some way. That helps just give you a sense of direction, because once you start drafting and putting it in paragraph form, if you have already an idea of what you want to say and how it's going to be organized, it's going to be easier to get that draft out. And a draft is literally when you put it into paragraphs. So it's once it goes from being like a outline or a checklist to full paragraphs, thorough ideas, all set up and organized in some format, okay? Drafting, there's usually multiple drafts, and the first one should be rough. It's not meant to be polished. Like, that's why there's a writing process in place. It's meant to get your ideas in paragraph form so then you can think about them more and really figure out if things are coming through the way that you want them to. Once you have the draft down, then it's important to have some sort of feedback and collaboration. In college, that typically takes the place or the form of peer review. But really, the idea is that you need to have other eyes on your writing. You're never going to completely detach yourself from what it is you're writing about. And so you really need the perspective of other people to come in and point out things that could be clearer, could be stronger, could have more examples, different ideas about maybe the focus or what you could include, how you could organize things differently. And then those ideas are there to help you think through, like, oh yeah, that would really help this become clearer. I don't know, I don't really agree with that. But it's there to give you that kind of sounding board so that you can see what you want to adjust and change in your writing. Revising is the stage where you're making big changes. So changing whole paragraphs around, adding paragraphs, taking paragraphs out, changing the focus of your essay or whatever type of writing it is. Maybe like rearranging all the information in a paragraph. So it's these big, large-scale changes. Those are often referred to as higher order concerns because they're going to have more of an impact on the overall quality of your writing than any of the other smaller pieces. Once you made large-scale changes, then you got to edit your writing. And that's when you're looking really at grammar. If we want to kind of break it down to the basics, it's looking at little details. Are my words spelled correctly? Did I put periods where I should have? Am I using capitalization correct? Did I indent my paragraphs? It's those little bitty basic things. It's polishing up the content. So you really want to do that at the end or as close to the end of the process as possible so that you're not constantly having to go back and change those little pieces and edit, over and over. So once you do edit and you feel like you have that polished draft, that's really when we get to what's called a final draft. And really what that means is it's at the point that it's going to either be published or submitted to somewhere. So in a class, you would submit your final draft for the grade. But really, it's that point where you're just at kind of the deadline, you're at the place where you have to get in that final draft. It should be your best quality work, and it should, it should be the most polished out of all of your work. It doesn't mean it's perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. It just means that it's your strongest, best work at that point. So this process, it's not always this way. Like sometimes you might have a draft and then realize that you need to go back and think through some pre-writing again, or you might get some feedback and then realize like, ooh, I better go back to the starting board. Like I think I'm completely off. Let me go back and work through pre-writing again and rethink my ideas. So none of this is linear. Like you can go in any order with all those sort of middle pieces. This is just kind of the general way that people work through this process. So again, this is the basics. It's really just to kind of introduce you and make sure that we all have the same terminology going forward. In our class, we will be using both the reading and writing process consistently. So it's just important to start off with everyone having an idea of what these actually mean and what they are. So any questions, of course, always reach out. Other than that, I hope you found this helpful.